generation, but it is identifiably some form of education at the heart of all these other factors, and without it, none of them seem to coalesce. So, when I start to look at an environment to assess whether or not it is a healthy environment for entrepreneurial activity, I look at these kinds of factors. And that's not necessarily looking at a country or a culture. It can also be looking at a corporation or a group of companies. That can constitute an environment just as much as a geographical area can. And you can see, if you look at certain corporations, that all of these enabling factors are present. And such corporations tend to produce more successful spin-outs or ventures of one sort or another. So I leave it to you to assess whether or not the enabling environment that you inhabit works as well as it can on all of these dimensions. Perhaps it does. It seems to me from my brief observation that it certainly does, although the availability of larger scale growth finance will have a different name than public stock markets. But we can elaborate on that perhaps later. So I'm going to skip ahead now to my next point, looking at how Islam enters into all this. But I just want, by way of conclusion, to say that what we've been doing at Oxford is attempting to take these general principles about entrepreneurship and understand how the enabling environment, the social context, is often a far more important factor than the technical skills. And education should pay more attention to the social context than it has done in the past. So just very briefly, here's some of what we've been doing at Oxford to try to strengthen our understanding of the importance of the social context. We have been promoting actual business activity among the students, to put it simply. The undergraduates as well as the postgraduates are given many more opportunities actually to start businesses while they are students. And we give them money. We've managed to find supportive alumni and other interested investors who have set up various funds, and they invest for real in real ventures that happen to be run by students. It's almost like a kind of a laboratory session where instead of just sitting in the classroom and thinking about these things, we force the students out of the classroom and give them enough support to take risks and try their hand at the real thing. They're in a relatively low-risk environment, but it's significantly higher risk than not trying at all. And as a result, we've had some big successes. There have been some 7,000 undergraduates just in the past few years actively involved in the Oxford Entrepreneurs Student Society. It's actually now the largest student society of any sort in the whole of Europe, which I think is extraordinary. And one of the reasons why there's so many students involved in this is that we've created events and awareness-raising activities that entice people into thinking about themselves as entrepreneurs. So, for example, we have an annual event called Silicon Valley Comes to Oxford, where we talk about what is it about Silicon Valley as an environment that has enabled so much successful entrepreneurship. And we bring the real people from Silicon Valley all the way over, and they mingle with the students and they inspire them, and then the students go off and try their hand. We've recently had the founders of eBay and PayPal and Google and LinkedIn and Linux and Facebook and Twitter all sitting on a stage at the same time, which is an impressive thing. And Oxford is able to do this because it has some advantages. It has a very prominent brand, and we can entice people to come to Oxford on the basis of that. But whatever pulling power you have to bring entrepreneurial role models together is a very important thing to engage in, much more important than teaching people how to write a business plan. business plans are just a tool, but they can be made more exciting. One of the things we do is we tell people the basics of how to write a plan, but we basically force them to figure that out for themselves. Then we spend our time making them compete with each other to demonstrate, under the pressure of that sort of environment, which business plans are the best. So instead of grading them on how well they've written their plans, we just turn them loose into business plan competitions. And then they see for themselves which business plans are the most effective. They're not taking a cue from a teacher who's never run a business in his life. They're taking their cues from other entrepreneurs and investors who know a great deal more about what works and what doesn't. And they believe that much more than they would believe anything I told them. So the basis of our teaching and development of entrepreneurship at Oxford is this. We're pushing people out of the classroom. We're forcing them to think about the environment in which they're trying to become an entrepreneur. And on the basis of that, we're giving them much more chance to develop effective skills that suit the pursuit of whatever opportunities they have in mind. And we're doing this just to make a very important point at pretty much every level of the university, not just in the business school, but in the engineering faculty, in the law faculty, people studying for undergraduate degrees and postgraduate degrees, and also people who have finished university and come back for executive education and training. Creating an entire ecosystem for entrepreneurial activity that's much healthier than just a classroom-based one. All right. I can simplify all of this by saying any entrepreneurial venture must understand the market in which it's operating, and by that I mean the demand factors. Who's going to buy whatever you're producing? The industry in which it's operating, and by that I mean the supply factors, the other people who could supply the same thing. And you need to understand that at a very general level across the society and a very specific level down to your individual customers. This is sort of the first thing you would look at, the demand factors at a general level. And this is almost the last thing you look at. Who would purchase your product and why? Also, you need to understand who is going to do this, who is going to make this venture happen, because without knowing the skill base or the attitudes of the individuals, you can't necessarily predict how they'll behave and how they'll be able to organize the information necessary for understanding the rest of it. This is the most general way I can represent what we believe is the right way to develop entrepreneurship. And you can see that it's not about skills, it is about understanding the context, the environment, the social and cultural value system in which you're operating. Okay, so I hope that gives you a good sense of the approach that we've been developing at Oxford that derives from the general approach in the US and Europe. And now I'm going to turn to I'm going to turn to something not like that, because I think that's too general. I want to move to my next point, which is the specific case of Islam and entrepreneurship, understanding how aspects of the specifically Islamic social context changes what I've just been talking about. Now, here you know much more about this than I do. I have spent a number of years studying Islam as a social system, not as a religion. I want to ask your forgiveness in advance for anything that I have misinterpreted or terminology that I might misuse, or even theological concepts that I might be getting wrong. It's a challenge for me often to interpret the meanings of words, because I note they have great subtlety. But I think that you will not hesitate to correct me if I make mistakes, either as I go along or afterwards when we get to the question and answer session.